are allowed to think big and dream big. How to generate different systems. Systems that provide stability and are nested within the harmony of nature. I'm excited to explore with you the intriguing bandwidth of information our researchers and friends have surfaced. Let's dive into our next topic to find out how we can actively shape a future worth pursuing and living for.
Perhaps the greatest story ever told is the story of money. Not everybody believes in human rights, not everybody believes in heaven or hell, but everybody believes in money. And even more amazingly, everybody believes in the same money, like the dollar bill. Now the dollar bill, when you look at it, this piece of paper has no objective value whatsoever. You cannot eat it, you cannot drink it, and you cannot wear it. But you can get bananas, clothes, and houses in return for it. So the concept of money is entirely arbitrary. It only has as much value as we assign to it. But how did we get here? In ancient times, our ancestors lived nomadic hunter-gatherer lives without a monetary system. Bands were self-sufficient, they shared their goods and services through an economy of favors and obligations. Bartering emerged as the initial trade method, but was only crucial for obtaining rare items that could not be found locally, like obsidian or pigments. Then, 10,000 years ago, humans began to actively shape their food supply with the local, systematic cultivation of plants. It was the beginning of the agricultural revolution. For agriculture, humans started to majorly change their environment to cultivate plants. Along with agriculture came sedentarism. At this point, most people continued to live in small, intimate communities. Much like hunter-gatherer band, each village was self-sufficient economic unit, maintained by mutual favors and obligations, plus a little barter with outsiders. Villages were small and their economies limited. With societal growth, effectively managing vast amount of data became crucial. Numbers became vital. But the human brain wasn't initially wired for numerical processing. Between the years 3500 BC and 3000 BC, the ancient Sumerians therefore invented a revolutionary system called writing to handle extensive mathematical data, combining numbers and symbolic representations like people, animals, merchandise, territories, or dates on clay tablets. The Sumerians thereby released their social order from the limitations of the human brain, opening the way for the appearance of cities, kingdoms, and empires. At this early stage, writing was limited to facts and figures. Writing initially served record-keeping purposes, focusing on economic transactions like tax payments and debts. So writing emerged first for the purpose of accounting. Then, the rise of cities and kingdoms and the improvement in transport infrastructure brought about new opportunities for specialization. Villages that gained a reputation for producing really good wine, olive oil, or ceramics discovered that it was worth to specialize nearly exclusively in that product and trade with other settlements for all the other goods they needed. But specialization created a problem. How do you manage the exchange of goods between the specialists? A new economic model was needed. We talked about the barter system, but bartering is effective only when exchanging a limited range of products. Imagine if 1000 different commodities are traded, then buyers and sellers must know around 500,000 different exchange rates. As a solution to this challenge, societies came up with the invention of money. The development of money required no technological breakthrough. It was purely a mental revolution. It involved the creation of new intersubjective reality that exists solely in people's shared imagination. Money is not necessarily coins and banknotes. Money is anything that people are willing to use in order to represent systematically the value of other things for the purpose of exchanging goods and services. Today, for example, we accept digital data that is stored on servers as money. So money enables people to compare quickly and easily the value of different commodities, to easily exchange one thing for another, and to store wealth conveniently. It became the universal medium of exchange that enables people to convert almost everything into almost anything else. It made vital contributions to the appearance of complex commercial networks and dynamic markets. In conclusion, these ancient inventions writing, numbers, mathematics, accounting, and money, alongside scientific and technological advancements, shaped our complex, globalized systems that we live in today. Numbers and mathematical scripts became the world's dominant and universal language for recording and processing data and for trading with each other. But why am I telling you all of this? It is important to understand that the invention of mathematics, accounting, and money is quite young relative to the 2.5 million years of evolution of the genus Homo and the evolving of the Homo sapiens 200,000 years ago. It is important to understand that with the introduction of agriculture, we started to change our way of living completely, and thereby started to majorly redesign our environment to an extent that 37% of our land surface today became agricultural land. It is important to understand how all these inventions shaped our systems and our perception of the world. Especially, it is important to understand how the modern humans are assigning values to things in life, predominantly in numbers expressed in money. Capitalism became the dominant system design of nearly every nation on the planet, and our global capitalistic system is based on the shared belief system that money has value to us. At the same time, scientific and technological revolutions were and are accelerating the evolution of us humans in rapid ways, and it's widely believed that capitalism laid the foundation for this rapid evolutionary process since its implementation. So nowadays we live in a system of global capitalism and the so-called free market economy that brought us a lot of prosperity on the one hand, but is simultaneously destroying the nature that we depend on at an unprecedented speed. With the advancements in ecological, environmental, and sustainability science, we start to understand that our modern ways of living and operating are harming the planet. Nevertheless, we were taught in school that capitalism is the best system that humanity came up with in human history, and there is no better alternative yet. Why is capitalism like this, and could there be another solution to the negative side effects of capitalism? A lot of critics of capitalism argue that the main problem of capitalistic system lies in its design. It is primarily focused on profit maximization and not necessarily on the well-being of humans and nature. In fact, historically, social, human and nature rights are quite recent inventions compared to the invention of money, and new laws are being formulated every year to make the system more just and fair and sustainable. The systems that humans live in are in constant evolution and are being constantly changed and adjusted by them. So the question is it possible to adjust the capitalistic system in a way that sustainability and well-being of humans and nature becomes the target of the system? In this podcast, I want to focus on nature well-being and try to integrate nature into the capitalistic system. Before doing that, I briefly want to talk about the definition of capital by an organization called the Capitals Coalition. Quote, "Capital has traditionally been thought of only as money, but capital can describe any resource or asset that stores or provides value to people. Natural capital, social capital, and human capital work in much the same way as traditional capital. If we invest in them, they create value, and if we degrade them, we limit their value. Viewing capital in this way raises the question of whether capitalistic systems sufficiently integrate natural, social, and human capital into their balance sheets, and thereby if they value them sufficiently and treating them accordingly to their value." In this episode, due to time constraints, I only want to focus on natural capital. What is natural capital? One possible definition of natural capital is, quote, "the stock of renewable and non-renewable natural resources that combine to yield a flow of benefits to people." Nature provides a lot to us every day in terms of food, fuel, fiber, but also ecosystem services. Forests provide flood prevention, drought control, and climate regulation. Bees provide pollination for agriculture. But most of these services that nature provides are for free. They are public services and we don't measure their value. The net result is we do not manage the resources that nature puts at our disposal for free sustainably. But we need to understand the value of ecosystem services because they are providing the fundament of life on Earth. Ecosystem services must be not at the periphery of our thinking, but at the heart and center of our policy. Let us think for a moment about the services that ecosystems provide for agriculture. The hugely valuable agricultural productivity comes partly from a global rainfall cycle, which is all about forests and rainforests generating the rainfall that comes to us. We don't recognize it, we don't measure it, we don't value it, and the net result is we lose forest. They are some of our most valuable and most important natural assets from the world, essential for providing the rainfall around the world, and yet we lose them. Another example are pollinators. Bee-based pollination and insect-based pollination has been estimated to be worth almost $200 billion. That's nearly 12% of the global agricultural output. And of course, it is not just a question about how much is it worth, because how could you manage agriculture without pollinators? And yet, in economics and in the prices we pay for our agricultural products, we don't measure the value of pollination, and therefore the bee population are declining. So agriculture depends upon ecosystem services, and yet this link in its economic significance has not been truly appreciated. That is one dimension. The other dimension is that agricultural systems also provide ecosystem services, and we need to understand that across different forms of agriculture. Some agricultural systems provide more, others provide less. Some agricultural systems have huge costs to ecosystem, for example, because of the excessive use of artificial fertilizers and pesticides, which have damaging impacts on human health, local communities, or soil fertility. And by that, incurring costs to the society, which are again invisible. This cost can also be labeled as externalities. Let us quickly talk about externalities. In environmental economical context, externalities refer to costs imposed by businesses that are not paid for by those businesses. For instance, industrial processes can put pollutants in the air that increase public health costs, but the public, not the polluting businesses, picks up the tab. In this way, businesses privatize profits and publicize costs. In this context, a study from 2010 conducted by the environmental consultancy TrueCost indicated that none of the world's top industry would be profitable if they paid for the unpriced natural capital they use. Unpriced in this context means that businesses don't pay for natural capital that they use, like clean water, for example. Ponder that for a moment. None of the world's top industrial sectors would be profitable if they would pay fully for the environmental cost. So the traditional approach to wealth creation can actually create a net loss of wealth. The study indicates that, for example, the uncounted cost of East Asian wheat and rice farming were roughly $500 billion in 2009. 2012, revenues from that farming was less than $100 billion. For the calculation of the natural capital, a specific methodology was developed built on a series of assumptions. The study tried to estimate, in monetary terms, the financial risk from unpriced natural capital inputs to production across business sectors at a regional level. The result of the study indicated that world's biggest industries burn $7.3 trillion worth of free natural capital a year, 13% of 2009 global GDP. The majority of unpriced natural capital costs are from greenhouse gas emissions, followed by water use, land use, air pollution, land and water pollution. The biggest environmental impacts can be attributed to greenhouse gas emissions. The biggest environmental impacts can be attributed to greenhouse gas emissions from coal power generation in Eastern Asia and land use from cattle ranching and farming in South America. The biggest single environmental cost comes from greenhouse gases from coal burning in China. Many of these natural capital costs are found in the developing world, but the resulting goods and services are being consumed by resource-intensive supply chains around the planet. Thus, it is a global challenge for a globalized world. So you see, the economic invisibility of nature is a double problem, both in terms of what we don't appreciate ecosystems provide, and we don't recognize the cost of our industries to ecosystems. But it needs to be understood, recognized, valued, and integrated into policies and business practices because humanity depends upon nature. As we said, the economic system is primarily designed with the focus of generating profit and economic growth. Through research and experience, we are realizing that our economic practices have many negative effects on the nature we depend upon. We need to understand the negative consequences of our actions and change our behavior to sustainable practices. But it also needs to be financed. The Emissions Gap Report 2022 from the UN indicated that a global transformation to a low-carbon economy is expected to require investments of at least $4 to $6 trillion per year. If the biggest industries and the consumers would pay the $7.3 trillion worth of free natural capital that are burned every year, this could fill the financial gap. Because money became the universal way of assigning values, money could be a way of valuing ecosystems that are crucial for our survival. The true cost needs to be integrated in our economic model, so unsustainable products become more expensive and sustainable products finally affordable. By redesigning our economic model in this way, we might still have a system that is profit-driven, but at least is including nature in its equation and making it unprofitable to act unsustainable with nature. You might ask yourself, are there successful examples of integrating natural capital into the economic system? In Ireland, for example, a 15-cent levy on plastic bags reduced consumption of these bags by 92%. And promoted the use of reusable bags by the majority of shoppers, with the receipts going to a fund used to support waste management and other environmental initiatives. In Denmark, household water consumption was greatly reduced by a 150% increase in the price of water through a combination of taxes: water supply tax, VAT, variable water tax, green taxes, fixed wastewater charge, and state wastewater tax. Costa Rica launched an innovative Payment for Ecosystem Service program, short PES, in 1997 as a national payment program for carbon storage, hydrological services, and the protection of biodiversity and landscapes. This scheme has been credited with reducing the rate of deforestation in Costa Rica from one of the world's highest to net negative deforestation by the start of the 2000s. Between 1997 and 2004, approximately $200 million were invested in payments for environmental services to protect over 460,000 hectares of forest, to establish forestry plantations, and to provide additional income to more than 8,000 forest owners. Payments for environmental services have been predominantly financed by receiving 3.5% of revenues from a sales tax on fossil fuels. But the objective is that all beneficiaries of environmental services eventually pay for the services they receive. The PES scheme has helped slow deforestation, added monetary value to forest and biodiversity, and increased understanding of the economic and social contributions of natural ecosystems. I talked to the director of the Costa Rican NGO Conservation International, Ricardo Olate, that is focused on sustainable development and has supported the Costa Rican delegation to the UNFCCC during the last few years, and asked him about his opinion of the framework of natural capital and payment for ecosystem functions, and what he thinks about those.
In the late 80s, Costa Rica had around 40% of forest cover. Currently, the last measurement showed that Costa Rica has already reached 62% of forest cover. So meaning that we have been able to recover 22% during the last 25 years, more or less roughly 1% per year. This is not just the result of the investment on payment for ecosystem services, but also because the strengthening of the national system for conservation areas, which is the government agency managing the protected areas in Costa Rica, and also because of the ban on land use change in the forest areas. There are a combination of three key, political decisions and creating capacity to be able as a government to enhance and to ensure that these provisions are being respected. This is about how to best decide and design mechanisms to share benefits with the landowners. And this is what Costa Rica have been doing. So we have shared, our experience with near to 10 delegations from African and Asian countries coming to Costa Rica to better understand how the PS scheme functions. And so there is a lot of interest on that. But the point here is that countries sometimes don't understand that for being successful, they have to invest in creating institutional capacities. legal frameworks, enabling conditions. It's not just about having, a good intention of doing things, but they have to work on creating the capacities to manage everything because it's not easy. It's a complex program that in the case of Costa Rica, for instance, we are just in payment for ecosystem services program, we are investing currently more than 40 million US dollars per year. And there is the FONAFIFO, the National Forestry Financing Fund, which is the agency that manages that program, is composed of about 150 people for a country that is 50,000 square kilometers. But at the end of the day, the results are there, the successes are there, and but sometimes countries in particular, big countries and poorer countries don't understand that they have to they have to see this as an investment for the long term.
These countries show that integrating nature into the economic and political model can have positive effects on nature and human well-being. As our modern society is based on numeric values and money, it makes sense to adjust these rules for the economic system and by that reprogram it to function more in favor of human and nature well-being instead of solely being focused on profit maximization. We should stop thinking in short-term economic interests and instead focusing on the long-term value of our global natural capital. Natural ecosystems should be worth more alive than dead. Let us redesign our financial and economic system to function for the well-being of nature and humanity. And by that, try to change international values for nature and our beautiful planet Earth. I would like to thank you for your attention. I hope I gave you some interesting insights into how society functions and how we can find pragmatic solutions by adjusting our current systems.